I am a daughter. I'm an only child of an only child with an only child. I am a native of Philadelphia. I am a wife. I am a mother. I am a lover of baseball. I really developed a love for baseball because that was something that I bonded with my dad over. My dad was a big lover of baseball, and we would go to the Philadelphia Phillies games together. So that really instilled in me this love of baseball. So even now, people know during baseball season, that's my thing. I am an advocate. It's interesting, growing up, I went to a very religious summer camp, and I went to Catholic school growing up. So it was instilled in me this whole idea of turn the other cheek. So I would get beat up just because I wouldn't hit back. But the only time that I knew that it was okay to hit back was if you were messing with someone who couldn't defend themselves. So I wouldn't defend for myself, but I would defend for someone else. And I remember having a neighbor and having kids pick on him. And that's when I kind of became that advocate, that defender, if you will. So I'm a defender as well. I recognize that there are people in this world who either don't have a voice or don't have the ability to defend themselves for whatever reason. Sometimes it's because they just don't know how. Sometimes it's they don't believe that they're worthy of it. But I've always had instilled in me from my mom and my dad that you are worthy, and also have instilled in me this love of God and knowing that we are all God's children. So like, how dare someone not treat one of God's children as the precious person that they are. So I very much, growing up, was that defender of people who couldn't defend themselves. You know, it was watching my dad and watching my mom. My dad was very quiet. My dad was, but he was a quiet storm. And I never forget one time growing up, I was maybe in grade school, and had a neighbor who was getting picked on, and watched my dad go out and defend this young kid. Didn't have to, was no skin off of his neck, but he just wouldn't stand for the foolishness. And that's very much in my DNA. Matter of fact, I named my daughter Alexis, and one of the meanings of Alexis is the defender. So it really, it's the lineage. It's in our DNA of who we are. My mom, also very much a spokesperson for people. I think that's where I get the talking from. I don't get the talking from my dad. Definitely get the talking from my mom. So the voice of my mom, the actions of my dad. It was interesting being an only child. I grew up at one point wanting to have siblings, just because I saw other people that had brothers and sisters. But I was also my own best friend. So my favorite toy was this brown metal Tonka dump truck. Like, I wasn't into, like, I had Barbies and I had the Barbie dream house, but I really didn't play with that. My favorite thing was really driving around this little Tonka dump truck around the living room, pretending like I was picking up things and, carrying things. I didn't ascribe to the girly stuff. I was a tomboy, very much a tomboy. Put me in front of a tree, I would climb it. During the winter, when all the kids were outside and the guys were playing football, I'll never forget, Linda was my neighbor. We were the only two girls that ever wanted to play football. And we weren't the last ones picked. We were good. We had skills. So we would get picked before some of the guys because that's how good we were. So it wasn't just we're going to pick them because we need to fill the team. It was like, no, we're going to pick them because they're good. I Always had a cat. So my cat was my best friend. Always, that was who I talked to. I remember in high school meeting the person who would end up being my best friend throughout high school. We would bond over things that black kids in North Philadelphia didn't normally bond over. Like, I was into the Hardy Boys. I was into, matter of fact, which Hardy Boy? I was a Sean Cassidy Hardy Boy. And she was, I forget, I think his last name was Peter, whatever his last name was. But we were always into trying to solve, like, we would make up mysteries that didn't exist just to try to solve them. Very vivid imagination when it came to stuff like that, because I also wanted to be an actress. So I was never shy, never quiet. If you gave me a stage, I was going to take up space on that stage. I was into speech competitions. I was into shows, even in grade school. And I was also rebellious. I remember in grade school, so like I mentioned, I went to Catholic school. And back then, girls were not allowed to be altar boys or, altar girls. They didn't have altar girls back then. Only boys were allowed to do it. And I tried to start up this whole like revolution in my church to start having altar girls, because we were the ones going to church. Every Sunday, the priest would have to like scramble and find some of the boys to be altar boys. And we would always sit there and like, we're right here, we're ready. And it actually formed kind of my separation from the Catholic Church, because to me it said, even though you love God, you're not worthy to serve. And I had an issue with that. I remember in Catholic school, back in grade school, now I'm dating myself. This is back when they used to have on TV, it was on ABC, it was Challenge. It was like what was it? It was the Girls Against the Guys Challenge. And it spurred from Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs, the big tennis match. Well, I was in 7th grade, and that person in me, because the guys would always try to act like they were better than some of them would try to bully some of the girls, and I convinced the school to let us do a Guys Against the Girls challenge. So they gave us off for that whole day, like we didn't have to go to class, and we had a series of athletic events that the girls competed against the guys, and we almost won. It came down to like the relay race, and we just didn't quite have enough stamina to beat. It was like 2 guys left, and I think it was me. I think I was like the last girl, and I was like struggling, trying to keep up. But I will say, even though we didn't win, the guys had a different level of respect for us, because we tried and because they saw how close we came. So it's always things like that. Like, what's that hurdle? Like, how do I prove that, nope, I'm just as good, or we are just as good as whomever? So that really permeates throughout my childhood, all of those wanting to prove that, yes, I can. That's hard, because there's so many people that have woven together the fabric of who I am. Definitely would say my dad. And it was interesting because it wasn't that we were so close, but his love of family was bar none. Everybody, his loyalty towards family, everybody saw that. James Waller, like if you could count on anybody, if you were family, it was James Waller. He really instilled, you didn't travel to a city where you had a family member and not call that family member up and say, hey, I'm in your city, what you doing? Even if you couldn't connect, you still always reached out. I think if I really think about from a working perspective, there was a boss, a manager that I had, Helen, who we were polar opposites. If I was cold, she was hot. All of the things. But the respect that we had for each other, she taught me, she was one of the people that taught me how to be a leader, because she trusted me She would allow me to go places, do things, because she saw in me ability. She saw in me competency. And she allowed me to really grow. She is the reason why I moved into leadership, because of how she was a leader to me. Whenever I look, especially early on when I first became a manager, I would almost do those like, what would Helen do kinds of thoughts. I would also say, when I was going for my master's at St. Joe's, I was still a bus driver. So I was a college dropout, and learned real quick driving the bus. Oop, nope, that's why I need that piece of paper, and went back to school. So I'd gone back, got my undergraduate degree. The very organization that paid for me to go back to school wouldn't hire me in the field that I went back to school for. So I said, you know what, fine, I'll keep going to school. So I started going to get my master's. And I would go to class at night still in my bus driver uniform. And other people in the class were younger, and they had their suits and their little briefcases. And I remember going to my professor, who was also the head of the program that I was in, John Thinnis. And I remember, saying to him one day, I was just feeling kind of, I didn't feel like I belonged there. And, I told him, I said, you know what, this might not be the right thing for me. And he stopped me and he said, Dana, this is going to mean more for you than it will the majority of the people in this class. You're going to take more out of it, and you're going to be able to give more because of it. And at first, I joke to this day, and I used to say, at first I think he was only saying that because he didn't want to lose tuition. But he was right. Almost every job I've had since then, that story and my background of being a bus driver and persevering through jumping off the bus, running the class, coming back, and being able to take what I was learning in class and applying it to real life and seeing how it meshed together, it meant the world. It meant the world, and my story actually inspired others. There were other bus drivers that, after they saw me going to school, said, hey, I want to go to school too. And they would sit down with me and say, hey, how hard is it? Walk me through the process. And I would walk them through the process. And I look back now and know that not only that background of being told no when I was trying to get that job, that corporate job, and being told, well, you're a bus driver, don't you want to be a street supervisor or something like that? That has inspired me and also fueled me in the work that I do now, because I know what it feels like to be put in a box and be told what you can only do, and having this label of what you can only be, and knowing that there was so much more to me, and seeing how that impacts others, where there's so much more that they have to give. And all it takes is for somebody to be able to see that, and to be able to give them that chance, and to nurture them and groom them and lift them up when they feel down. And that's who I am as a person because of what it did for me. I don't think that it was any one person, because there were hundreds of stories, some good, some bad. What I will say is, it's interesting. I remember specifically being on one bus route and having a passenger say to me one day, you must really love your job. Because I was that friendly bus driver. I would speak to you when you got on. Some passengers that were regulars, I would remember either where they worked, or they had shared stories about their kids or something. And people pick up on that positive energy. And when the person said, you must really love your job, I said, no, not really, but it's not your fault. I can't take out how I'm feeling because I've got bills to pay on you. You are a brand new experience every time you get on my bus. So how do I treat you like this is the first time? So yes, I'm very much that. I'm going to speak to you when you get on. I'm going to speak to you when you get off. I remember having two little kids. Oh, this was a funny story. I was driving one bus route, and I used to have this brother and sister, young kids that would get on my bus after school. And someone got on my bus one day, and I don't remember how, but we started talking about high school. No, the kids were asking me a question. The kids got on, and just in general, they were asking me, I think they asked me, did you have to go to school to be a bus driver? And somehow we got on the conversation. I was telling them about my high school, because I went to the first Catholic high school in Philadelphia, John W. Hallahan. And I mentioned the school Hallahan. As a woman was getting off, she went, Hallahan, class of 74. And she got off the bus. And the kids were like wide-eyed, like, oh my God, someone else went to your high school. Then another woman came. She had also gone to my high school, different year. So it must have been like three different, it just randomly happened, but like three different people got off the bus and mentioned what school year they graduated, and all went to my high school. And it showed me, like the kids' amazement showed me how innocent kids are and how much of the world beyond the block that they live on, beyond their universe, if we don't expose them to what possibilities are, what's out there. For them, it was inconceivable that three random people would go to the same high school that I went to, not recognizing that it was a pretty popular high school in terms of its notoriety and that sort of thing. But to them, they were just used to their universe. So when you think about people in general, how many people are confined to their knowledge of the world just being that bus route that they travel, just being, that small select group of people that they happen to be around. And that's their worldview. So that's the only thing that they know. And how much better could we all get along if we could expand that worldview, if we could go outside of that normal bus route and really think about what else is out there, who else is out there, and how do we have connections to those people that are out there. I didn't know those three women didn't know me, but there was a connection there outside of me being their bus driver driving them home. So one challenge that I think I had was when my parents separated. It wasn't necessarily a surprise for me, but it was something where I recognized that it was something hard for them. It was one of those, they stayed together until I was older situations, even though it was a very tough upbringing to deal with when you have two parents that love you, but the environment just, it wasn't healthy. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't, abusive or anything like that, but it just wasn't a healthy environment. And at that same time, I was away at school, in a school that this is when I, graduated. It was, you're going to college, because I really wanted to go to New York and be an actress. And they were like, no, you're going to college. So I went to the first school that I applied to and got in. But I really didn't want to be there. And I struggled with changing majors. I struggled with trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And then on top of that, my parents broke up. And all of that kind of really was the reason why I dropped out of school. And that moment in time really left me with, all along, I used to always think I knew what I wanted to be and I knew what I wanted to do. And that was a period of time when I was kind of just lost and didn't really know what was next. And it was through friendships and even through me dropping out. I remember my dad, talking like, you're going to figure it out. You're going to figure it out. My mom, we'll work it out. We'll work it out. So they didn't give up on me, even though I think during that point in time, I was kind of giving up on me. And it was a significant piece of my journey in terms of, it was after that I became the bus driver, and had that realization that, okay, nope, there is purpose for me. And that's a big word for me, purpose. And I saw that, nothing against being a bus driver. I married my husband, who I met. He was a bus driver. Kids used to joke that knew we were going to get married and ask if we were going to have a bus driver wedding. But I just knew that wasn't it for me. And even through that hard, lost time, one of the lessons that I learned that I even instill in my daughter is that you don't have to be perfect all the time. So many times we think we've got to have it all figured out all the time. And that can be such a heavy weight that's just not healthy. Life is meant to be experienced. Sometimes we get it right and sometimes we don't. And it's how much we can bounce back from that. It's cliche, but they say fall 7 times, get up 8. It's true. You can fail forward. And it's okay. It doesn't make you any less of a person. It doesn't make you any less worthy. And I see so many times people who think they're supposed to have it all figured out. And I want to tell them, no, stop doing that to yourself. It's damaging when you carry that weight of perfection. Because who are you being perfect for? Because the one person who it matters, you're already what he wants you to be. So you can't do anything to be any better and make him love you anymore. And I had to learn that going through that patch of time when I didn't know what I was going to be. I didn't know what I was going to do. And I struggled with that because I was always that person that everybody thought always had it together. So, that struggle, I think, is a lesson learned that I want to teach people before they get to that point. So my daughter is 29 and she's a teacher and she has incredible gifts. And she has very high aspirations for herself. And one of the lessons that I would teach my daughter, that I continue to teach my daughter, is the lesson that I had to learn. It's not going to always be perfect. She used to be a perfectionist when she was little. If she couldn't get something just right, she would get so super frustrated. And I had to really work hard to instill in her that it was okay to not get it right. It was okay not to be perfect. Even to this day, I think about, she's going to school for her master's, and she had to take a step down for a minute, and she would get frustrated. And I told her, I said, sweetie, I didn't even start to get it right until I was 30. You're ahead of the game already. So don't put that weight on you. You are good enough. And I tell that to people all the time. You are good enough. Whatever your worst day, you're still good enough. You have gifts that the world needs. You have gifts that no one else has. And be grateful for those gifts and be willing to share those gifts, because you're a phenomenal woman. As Maya Angelou says, you're a phenomenal woman. And I would say that to any woman, no matter what age. There are women out there who think because they're, in their 50s, 60s, 70s and beyond, sometimes they look back with regret and say, oh, I wish I could have, I wish I did. It's like, nope, you're on the journey and you're on the path that you're on. There are life lessons that you learned on that journey, good or bad, but that was your journey. And it's okay, because you're still good enough. Even if you didn't go left and you went right, that right turn, you impacted someone that you might never know. I'm in a season of transition right now, and the affirmations that I have gotten from people that I didn't even know knew who I was, and their testament around how something that I've done has touched their lives has been so affirming for me, because there are times when I thought, I'm just not doing it. I'm not creating the space and the environment that I really wanted to create. But I'm learning today, I'm learning right now that no, I made an impact. And I think women out there really need to recognize it could be the slightest smile that you give someone. It could be the tender moment that you share with someone, but you're enough and you make an impact every day.